All right. So what's up, string fam? This is going to be round 2 of trying to do a tutorial for the ObiWand top string. I did one 2-3 days ago. It was way too long. I jotted down a couple of notes and I was like, oh, okay, these are the points that I want to, that I really want to hit. And all of a sudden it became like a 45-minute video that I was trying to edit down to somewhere in the 20s. I'm going to try to make this one significantly simpler with tiny little bit of information about why and then the how. Okay, for the why. When STX released the Eclipse 3 last summer, initial reactions were really positive. They designed this head to specifically not have the problem the Eclipse 2 had, whereas the head folded back when it got hot. They solved that problem. The plastic is the same, but in the design, they made it stronger structurally, and they solved the problem of the head folding backwards. As a result, because of the design, as we can see on this back edge right here, even though the Eclipse 3 has a speed scoop right here, just like the Eclipse 2 and many of their other field heads before it, the way that this one is designed, this edge right here is the first thing that touches the ground on ground balls. So more than any other head I have ever seen, the Eclipse 3 tears through top strings faster than Cookie Monster through a box of Chips Ahoy cookies. Why did I start doing the ObiWand top string? Well, a customer asked me on an Eclipse 3 to do some form of a hidden top string, but not for the entirety of the scoop because they didn't like how it looked. I agree with them. And so I just started screwing around. Now, I've had some Eclipse 3 prototypes for a little over 2 years. The head was released last summer, but it wasn't really until after this past spring in 2024 and subsequently this summer at goalie camp, myself and others really got to see what a full season worth of use looked like with this head. We know that the design of the head has worked. The head does not fold back nearly as much, but because of the design, this back edge of the scoop tears through top strings faster than anything I've ever seen. Faster than Cookie Monster through a big pot of fresh baked cookies. So initially, I started doing the ObiWand top string because a customer asked me to do some form of a hidden top string, but not for the entirety of the scoop because they didn't like how it looked. I tend to agree. I am going to keep doing this top string, specifically in Eclipse 3s. You can do it in any goalie head, frankly, because how I string all of my top strings, both in goalie heads and in field heads, it's all about longevity. And that's why I talk so much about how sticks that are strung well give a player an unfair advantage over their opponents who don't have well-strung sticks. Before coming up with this top string, I've only really ever used 2 top strings in the last few years. My Jedi top string and the Liberty top string, because those 2 variations give increased longevity. The advantage is how much longer those top strings will last. The string will not fray as much, the mesh will not fray as much, the head, the pocket, the mesh, the string, all of it will generally last longer if it's strung well. The ObiWand top string is now added to that mix, and I will use it exclusively on the Eclipse 3 and maybe some other occasions. But the reason why the ObiWand top string will last longer than just about any other top string is because there's not going to be any string here on this back edge that comes in contact with the ground first. This is by far the biggest and most important reason why I am going to be continuing to do this top string, and I recommend other people do the same. So today I've got a white Eclipse 3, I've got white, this is white impact mesh, and I've got purple string for the sake of contrast. As with all of the top strings that I do, I'm going to stretch out the mesh just a little bit, just enough with my hands here, and I am finding the row of the 12, I'm finding the end of the mesh that has the 12 diamond row. I'm going to fold over, as I do with all of my top strings for goalie heads on 12 diamond mesh. So hopefully, as you can see it, so right now what you're looking at, this is where the ball is going to come off. This is what I would say, this is the back part of the head that the camera is looking at. This is the front part of the mesh. So all of this is going to get flipped upside down like this. But I've folded over 2 rows of mesh, so I've basically doubled over on the 11 diamond row. And as I do with all of my top strings, I am effectively doing a 9 diamond top string because I bunch up the first and the last hole on each side get bunched up. So I'm tying the 2nd and the 10th holes to the sides over here. Because this is impact mesh, typically I'm tying off to the 3rd hole down the sidewall, and that's with original Hero goalie mesh, Grizzly 1, Mesh Dynasty, 12 diamond hex and rhombus. For impact mesh, I am tying off to hole number 4 in the sidewall, and then for wild things like Grizzly 2, I'm tying off on hole number 5. So I am showing you this, even though I'm going to be flipping this mesh upside down here, I am showing you the front side of the mesh first because I want you to see how I shift the mesh myself before I start stringing it. So I'm basically I'm saying this is the front, this is the back. The back part of this fold, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 is the one in the middle. I am going to shift. So all of my top strings pretty much are my Jedi top string, my Liberty top string. They are shifted 9 diamond top strings. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The sixth hole is the one in the middle. So as with all of my top strings, it is effectively a shifted 11/9 diamond top string, however you want to call it. But I want to count from the outside 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So diamond number 6 right here, that's the middle. Everything is shifted from the back part is shifting up a little bit. So that right there, this little spot that you see that is being covered by the string right there, that is the most important spot as far as starting this off. I screwed this up a bunch of times. I did the trial and error, just trying random stuff, figuring, going all the way to the ends and undoing it and repeating. That's how I figured out how to do this. So if you screw it up, don't worry about it. I'm going to try to go slow, explain what I'm doing, why and how I'm doing it, and hopefully that'll work for you. Remember, this whole bit of mesh is going to be flipped upside down. So I'm going to go through the center hole in the scoop first. I'm going to flip the mesh, as you can see here, and I'm going to go back to front and then front to back through the mesh. Now I'm going to go front to back through that same center hole in the scoop. That spot right there where I went through the mesh, that is going to be tucked right up against the plastic right there. I don't need it to stay tight right now. I just want to make sure that my string, obviously I've pulled way too much string on purpose. And I do that so that I have, even when I get to the very ends, I always pull more string. Doesn't matter. Top string, sidewalls, field stick, goalie stick, custom flex mesh. I'm always pulling more string. So when I get to the very end, I can still wrap it around my fingers, wrap it around my hands, so I can pull everything super tight. So I want this to sit right there. I'm going to take pictures at the end of this of what the front looks like. Right now, as you can kind of see just a little bit, this thing right here, this is my camera. It has my microphone and it's set up in the middle of the head. So I can't really flip the head right now to show you, but I will show you at the end what this is supposed to look like. But I'll loosen this. So just so you can kind of see and you get a better expression, I am doing a hidden top string in these 3 holes. 1, 2, 3. I'm doing the same thing for these 2 holes as I'm doing for this one. So I'm going to repeat what I just did here, going in one direction and going in the other through these equivalent adjacent parts of the mesh. Like I said, right now does not need to be super tight. I'm not going to worry about, I'm going to hold one side. I'm going to hold this side over here with my left hand. I'm going back to front through the plastic hole over here. I'm going to find, so I'm going the adjacent back to front, front to back through the mesh. I'm going to go front to back through that hole in the plastic. I'm just going to let that hang. I know it's probably, hopefully it's not going to fall. Going over in the left direction, back to front through the plastic. Pull that all the way through. Back to front through the adjacent bit of mesh to the middle where I did that. And I'm going to go front to back through the plastic again. So there are the 3 holes that I am going to effectively be hiding the top string. I'm going to loosen these up a little bit. So I know the string is tight enough. I want to make sure that bit of mesh is sitting right up against the middle of the hole. And I'm going to pull that not as tight as I possibly can. I do not want to pull the mesh through the plastic. If I do that, I am going to be placing way too much stress on that bit of mesh. That is exactly the reason why I started doing the 2 top strings, now 3 top strings that I do all the time. I do not want to have an excessive amount of force or stress placed on any one spot of mesh or string. I do not want to have any one spot of mesh or string where there's a greater amount of stress placed on it than any other. I want to spread it out as much as possible. This is the advantage having doing a Jedi top string, a Liberty top string, and now an ObiWand top string, specifically on Eclipse 3. The advantage is it's going to last longer because it's not going to tear through the mesh and it's not going to tear through the string. So I'm holding right now with my thumb because I pulled that bit as close to the hole as possible without pulling it through. So I'm going to just make sure I'm stretching a little bit. I haven't stretched this mesh out too much other than what I can do with my hands. But I'm going to make sure that the string pulls that. I want to get that same piece of mesh as much pulled right up to the hole itself. Now, I'm still holding, with my left hand, you can see here, I'm holding on to the string just to make sure that that middle bit stays tight. Now I'm just going to do a top string knot, which also known as a cow hitch. I'm just going to do one of those over here on this side. Only reason why I'm doing this is I'm going to try to get this to stay tight. I just want to be able to work in the opposite direction over here towards my left, this way. And feeling confident that this part is not going to come undone. So now I'm going to keep going in this direction because this is tied off and this stays tight before I finish off. When I first started doing this top string, I hid through the mesh in these three holes. I realized very quickly that this part of the string is going to get torn through. Even though I'm doing the hidden part through here, this is going to get torn through because it's so much more of the scoop that sees contact with the ground. So now I'm going to go, even though I'm not going to hide any more of the mesh, I'm going to go back to front through. So I'm going to be going back to front through the plastic 5 times, or I should say through 5 holes, while keeping tension here, trying to figure out what's the next hole that I go through. I'm going to skip that spot, and I'm going to go through. So this, if I were going to hide another hole through the top string here, it'd be through there. But I'm not going to do that. I am going to go front to back through the mesh once through that hole. I'm going to leave that one open because if I come back here, I feel like I'm still too close. So I'm actually going to go through that spot right there twice. I'm going to keep this nice and tight right here. I'm going to pull that tight. So you're going to see that spot there. I'm going to go back to front through this hole again. Please excuse the ding-dings from my phone. I'm going to go, so I went back to front through the hole in the plastic here, the next adjacent in that direction, hole in the mesh, I went front to back. I'm going to go back to front through that same hole here, front to back through the next adjacent spot, hole in the mesh. Remember, the mesh looks the way that it does because it's shifted a little bit. Make that nice and tight. Okay, so I just shifted the camera so you can kind of see a little bit more of the sidewall holes that I worked through. So I just went front to back through that hole of the mesh. I'm going to go outside in through sidewall hole number 2, and then front to back through the next adjacent hole in the mesh. So as I'm getting close to finishing off this top string, remember I'm going to be tying off to sidewall hole number 4. I last went through outside in through sidewall hole number 2, front to back through the mesh that you see right there. Now, I need to be tying out, even though for all of this right here, I'll be going outside in. I need to finish going inside out. So what I do now is I'm going to keeping tension, as you see, I'm keeping tension in here quite a bit. I'm going to go outside in through hole number 3, sidewall hole number 3, and I'm not going to go through any mesh. I'm going to pull that nice and tight so you can see those nice clean lines. Now I'm going to go inside out through hole number 4. And that string is going to sit right nice and even on the plastic. So all of this is tied down. Now I'm going to go. So remember, this is hole number, let's say this is hole number 1 and this is hole number 2 and 10, 11 are on the other side. I'm going to go back to front now through both of those. So back to front through 2, inside out again through sidewall hole number 4. I'm going to position the mesh so that hole number 1 doesn't get used and it gets bunched up. I'm going to continue and try and pull that as tight as I can. I'm using my fingers here to keep some tension there. I'm going to go back to front through that same 2 holes of mesh, through hole number 2 in the mesh, inside out through sidewall hole number 4. And I'm going to tie this. See, this is why I say I've got a whole bunch of extra string. I'm trying to make that nice and clean, super tight. I have plenty of room. This is 275 paracord from Atwood Rope Company. Got plenty of room, so I'm going to go through it 3 times. Hopefully it's going to sit. Okay, there we go. So it's going to sit just how I want it to. I get it as tight as I possibly can, and then I worked. So I've got tension here. I make a loop. I'm going to do a double overhand knot. I'm keeping everything. Notice how I'm keeping it. This is what I do to keep the knot as close as I possibly can to the plastic. And I do that. Part of the reason why I wrap 2 times, or even in this case 3 times, is so if that loosens up a little bit, like if I only go around once and it loosens up, it loosens up. If I go around 3 times and I left, say, a couple of millimeters between the knot and the hole, that loosens up over a much greater distance, so it's not really going to get loose. I'm just going to cut and burn that end. That side's done. Now we are going to move over here to the other side, as you can see. So I have to undo this cow hitch. I'm going to kind of stretch things just a little bit. I'm going to undo this cow hitch, and I'm going to finish off the other side. I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to speed up the camera a little bit, so hopefully this isn't nearly as long as the first one. Okay, so you saw, I'm going to leave all that in there. So you saw what I did. I kept going, but I forgot that I went through the same hole on this side twice here. So that's why I stopped, I snapped my fingers, turn off the slow motion, and now I'm going to go back. This is why you always got to keep making sure. Even I've strung thousands of heads. I still screw up here and there. You always got to be paying attention, make sure everything is even and looks good. Ready? And so there we have it. So I'm going to move the camera around so you get an idea of what it looks like over here. And hold on 1 second, I'll flip the head around so you get a better idea of what it looks like from the front. And here we have it. So you can see a little bit better about what it looks like where I'm tying it off. How these 3 holes, remember I told you, it's very important. These don't get pulled through. It will put too much pressure on those spots of the mesh. You want to pull them right up to the hole, not through it. And so here we go. This is what it looks like from the front. You can see how the triple going through 3 times doesn't look the same in the front, but that's fine. Again, performance is always number one. You can see how there is just some nice clean lines of the mesh going from where the tie-off is all the way up to the middle and back. Not sure if I said this before or maybe I'm just repeating myself, but please remember, you do not want to pull the mesh through the plastic. It will put too much pressure on those 3 specific, or however many you do, 3 specific spots of the mesh. I don't do that on purpose because I want this to last. I created this style of top string because I want it to last. And like I said at the beginning, this specific head tears through top strings. So thank you very much for watching. If you've made it this far, if you have any questions or comments, please pop them down below. And I'll see you in the next video. And above all, keep stringing.